Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. Be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. Huge news yesterday came in late. LSU, James Cregg parting ways. And then a lot of talk, as I'm told, I'm sure other people you've heard as well. Looks like Brad Davis from Arkansas is going to be the guy. Let's start with James Cregg on the way out. If I asked you to evaluate James Cregg's time, his 3 years in Baton Rouge, what would you say?
Well, he was disappointing as a recruiter, and I think that was the thing that stuck out to me, and it's probably the thing that got him fired, one way or another. Not only what he recruited, but how he recruited. And I think we'll find that story out a little bit later on down the road. But you got to give him credit that in 2019, that unit was really good. And you can snowball this all you want about, okay, you had Joe Burrow and Clyde and the great receiving corps. Everything was the perfect storm that year, including their offensive line. And I thought he did a really good job. The thing about it is consistency from year to year. Last year, they were as soft as cotton up front. No physicality at all. You couldn't get a running game going. You got your quarterbacks knocked around on basically every play. And, I was one of them. And I wrote this back in December. I did not think he would make it. I thought he'd be part of the purge.
Yeah, so did I.
And, so I got a guy that, for whatever reason, he never remembers when I'm right, but he remembers when I'm wrong. 2 weeks ago, they always got the geniuses of the world. He said, I thought you said that Cregg wouldn't be here in 2021. So for that listener, I think at the end it turned out, and listen, nobody wants to see anybody get fired.
Sure.
He's a long-time connection with from back Tennessee days, USC, and that sort of thing. But, man, Matt, you can't go from having that unit in 2019, which was a good unit, I thought was well coached, to what you saw last year. And I think we'll find out the other piece of the story a little bit later involving recruiting. So who did they land last year? Okay, they were after big game.
Mm-hmm.
They put a concerted effort to go after top offensive linemen in the Midwest, because that's where a lot of these NFL linemen are coming from. They did get one in Detillier, but what else? Or are you hearing or seeing anything about those top linemen from that area even visiting LSU?
No. I mean,
and
Tristan Lee was
again,
the one big fish, right? And Tristan Lee was the one big fish they were after, and he picked Clemson.
And he screwed that up. Okay? He got played, so to speak. And maybe they played him too. So I don't want to put it on one player, but I think we're going to find out a little bit more about what's happened with that particular part. You don't make this change because you're unhappy of what happened in 2020. You made this change because of circumstances that they've got still out there about it. And you got to make a quick move. You can't, do long-term interviews. So this had to be kind of sit in a little bit after a period of time. And timing's everything in life if you're going to make a move. And so there were a couple coaches, and we talked about it, and Alex is one of them from Florida State. I think it has nothing to do with anything more than, I think finances is certainly some of it. But you can't convince me at any level that Mike Norvell's on firmer ground than Ed Orgeron. Now, some people have spun that out, but, okay, I saw Florida State play last year.
Mm-hmm.
They were a 3-6 football team. I think they beat Jacksonville State and they beat Duke de Fanel. The one game they really played well and one was North Carolina. But other than that, I have a friend of mine who's one of the big boosters at Florida State. He's in the theatrics world. which is unusual. You don't normally see that, but he is. And he can write a pretty big check. And his deal to me last week when we were talking over some other matters was Florida State's looking a lot like Miami of Florida. Just like them. A football team that just wants to talk about their history. Doesn't want to talk about this year, next year. Look where they finish in recruiting. People say, oh, well, it's Narble's first year. Okay, I get it, and I'll give him a pass. Look at how he finished in recruiting this spring. I think in Rivals he was 30th, and I think in 247 he was 23rd. So where's the big program now? Okay, if you want to talk about your past, that's great. And they were one time a king, so to speak, in college football with Bobby. That's no longer the case. And I think some people around him have told him, listen, you better get the hell out of here because we don't think it's going to get too much better than what you got. It's almost like a sinkhole now, similar to what's happened at Miami or Florida where you win after coach after coach after coach. But, Brad, he came to our Louisiana line camp, and we're still trying to figure it out because there is tape of me interviewing him. It's either 2013 or 2014. Either he was at Portland State at that time or James Madison. It was one of the two because of the fact they changed the rules that you could not bring in college coaches to work that camp. They changed the rule with that. So no college coach can come in here and work that Louisiana line camp. You can't get pro coaches. You can't get former pro players, former college, but you can't get a sitting college coach to come in here and work that camp. And I think that was changed in and around that time frame because we sat down and talked. And Brad talked about, man, I've been through the process. I would love to one day to return to Louisiana. These are where my roots are. He went to Bel Air, and so I get it. It makes all the sense in the world. A couple of years back, Coach Pittman was at another particular seminar speaking about offensive line coaches. And one of the first guys he talked about as a budding young talent as an offensive line coach, Brad Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing about it is that's your wheelhouse. That's Coach Pittman's wheelhouse. You look at his background and what he's been through. Yeah, he is the head coach, but he's one of the few guys almost similar to Ogeron that, his forte has been really line play.
Oh, yeah.
You don't see a lot of those guys. Normally they're the pitch and catch people or they're trying to defend the pitch and catch people. And he spoke about Davis, and he coached him at Oklahoma, and so that was a tie there. He brings him into Arkansas. He knows the area very well to recruit. He can't be a worse recruiter than Cregg. Because I think that was the biggest disappointment with James was that you didn't see it at an area where they really could get big-time help along that offensive line. He just wasn't able to land those guys at all. And along with maybe some of the tactics used. So, again, I think that you got an upgrade here from a guy that highly praised by one of the top offensive line coaches in the country in Coach Pittman. And you go back to where he's coached at, those offensive lines have been terrific. I don't care where he's been, and he praised Brad a lot, and that's why he brought him into Arkansas. And so, timing was right. Again, this is the third team in less than a year for Davis. Being at Missouri, then go to Arkansas, then at LSU, but certainly the Baton Rouge ties are there, and you need to get him in quickly. Like yesterday, because of what's happening over the next few weeks and this weekend and over the next few weekends, what's happening on LSU's campus. Yeah. It's going to be huge. Coach has talked about the response to LSU because it's still fresh in everybody's mind, Matt, that 2019 season. It's still fresh in that 16, 17-year-old young man's mind of what happened there. And so you want to bring that back. And so I'd be surprised if this lasted too much longer, so to speak. And I'm talking about hours. I'm not talking about days. And all indications are that it's Brad Davis.
Yeah, Mike, sounds like this morning they were sending a plane for him tomorrow. So,
yep.
so
you know where it's going. It's hours. It ain't days, that particular deal. But, again, the timing of this being late in the process, and I think there were some other names certainly kicked around if you put them on the lie detector machine. But, man, this stuff about, certain people wouldn't leave here and there, man, you got to understand the circumstances of where they're at. And the fact that he wanted to be here, he's talked about returning to Louisiana, and we are eventually going to find it in these archives of that interview with him, because that, if it's the year, I think I did maybe 10 or 11. So we will have to go through all that to dig it up. But he spoke about how much he loved Louisiana and how much Coach Pittman was a mentor to him, and that he sort of thinks about what Pittman would say in a situation, how he would teach technique, how he would teach footwork. And I think it's a good hire. And to be honest with you, I really did not think Cregg would survive the spring. I thought he'd be gone. And, God bless him. I thought he did a really good job in 2019, to be honest with you. With that crew, and he kept everybody upright, and he kept, that offensive line had some pretty big holes for Clyde to run through. But, you can't be a one-year wonder. Not in college football. You out of there. Somebody else says it better than me. But it's, what have you done for me lately?
Mike, the other big piece of news this week around LSU, obviously, was Arik Gilbert, who officially lands at the University of Georgia. Mike, I can't imagine. I mean, you and I talked about it enough. That's any surprise that he ended up closer to home. But if I could just ask how you feel that impacts both Georgia and LSU.
Well, listen, he's a unicorn talent. I've never seen anything like that at LSU, his talent as a tight end. Because he's really a big receiver playing tight end. Mm-hmm. And I think what Georgia's going to do with him, I think they're going to use him as a receiver. You've had some injuries there. In Pickens especially, and who knows when he'll be able to come back. It certainly puts the spotlight on Georgia, because other than the first game against Clemson, man, you should roll that schedule. And I think big time. This is, I think, Georgia's best shot to win a national championship. You got the right quarterback there in JT Daniels. They have recruited extremely well. Again, in some crazy moments, it maybe hasn't been the best coaching decisions made, but Kirby's is a really good defensive coach. And he gives them another weapon and a huge guy at wide receiver. Because really, I think no matter if he lined up in line as a tight end, he's really a receiver. That's what he is best at. He's a huge man that can fly. And so, it hurts LSU not to have him. It didn't surprise me that he wasn't going to come back. I think once you leave, and sometimes, but it's really not been the norm. A guy will come back. But it was almost a play along the way. Yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, I'm going to come talk to y'all. Yeah, I got to get my grades right. It continues. Man, I don't need the headaches. I would be willing to put it up for a great player. And I think he's got a chance to be that type player, to be honest with you. And I can understand why Coach O was, man, listen, I want him back. But he also put up with some of the other stuff involved. And so I think he's where he wants to be now. He's closer to home. He gives them, if he's academically eligible, he ain't watching, he's playing. He's that type of talent. And with their receivers with some injuries that they've occurred, that's where you're going to see him play at Georgia. I think he's going to be outside. He won't be as an inside flex tight end. He's a big-time talent. Then they also grabbed the transfer young man from Clemson who had some off the field issues and was basically sort of kicked off the team. But he's got first round pick type talent at corner, and they've lost 3 that top 3 cornerbacks. So, man, listen, if you've got a few nickels, you might want to think about that. I know I did about Georgia, and I think that this is their best shot. They got the right quarterback. They have other pieces in place, and so it certainly helps them tremendously. It certainly now puts the spotlight on Cole Taylor at tight end, who is a huge man. I mean, he's a tall drink of water. I mean, he's a big target for any of the quarterbacks to find downfield, but he's really like another receiver playing tight end. What it does is open the door for Besh. Because for me, I think in today's world, a receiver or that flex tight end can come in and give you help quickly, because not only have they played, 10, 11, 12 high school games, or maybe last year wasn't maybe that many, but also all these 7-on-7s throughout his career. So you get in an experienced guy, he understands it, man. He knows how to set up a defensive back and get open downfield. I think he'd be perfect for that position as that flex tight end. And so I know Ed is working with the tight ends to teach them how to block a little bit better. Just get in their damn way. Angle block them or get in their way. I mean, last year you saw tight ends almost kind of run out of the way. Come on, put a hand on them to try to stop it. And you got to run the football. And you got sometimes have to use that tight end as an extra blocker. Come on, you got to be able to angle block somebody. And it is becoming now, either you find a great receiver or a great blocker, but it's seldom you find guys that can do both at tight end. Come on, you ain't living in your daddy's world anymore at tight end. These guys they receivers today. And you can see now why Jake Johnson has said, hey, I'm committing to LSU. Because, again, he is built like the flex tight end, part receiver, part tight end that you see coming out of high school today. You look at his build today, he's 6'5", and 212, 215, somewhere in that range. And yeah, he can pick up some weight, but, again, man, I want to use him as a mismatch downfield. I don't want him at 250 pounds. I want him a little bit bigger than that 212 or 215, but I don't want him at 250 pounds. I want him to be able to use that athleticism and speed to beat you. So for this year, I think it's Cole Taylor. They're going to bank on him. And I think the guy to watch is the freshman in Besh, because I think he's got some skill set you can't teach as a route runner and a setup guy. That's the most difficult thing sometimes when you get to it. And I thought that's what jumped out at me. I know in doing pregame, we spoke about, Keishon Butte's ability to set up a defensive back and gain separation downfield. Okay, years ago, you wouldn't have saw a freshman do that. He might outrun you, but, he just was unique in that ability to kind of set you up, and then he gains a little bit of space and pop. You throw the football to him, and he gets open downfield. And so, it's an area that has sort of changed from Foster Morrow's final year at LSU to what Thad Moss did in the championship year. You were hoping Gilbert would be that guy to take it to another level.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen. And, listen, sometimes it's not the right fit for you. And, listen, if you're not happy, hey, God bless you. Wish you the best. I hope that, if we see him, it's in the SEC championship game.
Amen to that. Mike, the other bit of news out of LSU this week, we'll do this quickly, is that Tre Bradford announced that the freshman running back announced he's transferring out. Mike, they really don't have anybody proven at running back. I mean, that's not really a hot take or anything. I was a little surprised to see it. Thoughts on Bradford leaving and what that means for that room this year?
Last year we talked about this in the summer. Almost every press conference, Orgeron brought up Tre's name. Almost every time he brought up Tre's name.
Yep.
And you see, I caught it. Sometimes I do listen real well. And I caught it. He kept bringing up Tre's name. So him playing late in the year didn't surprise me. But when he had some opportunities, I think what really disappointed him was of dropping the football. He had a couple chances to make some catches that were dead on and dropped it out in the open field. And he had an off-the-field issue. And he can hear the hoofbeats of those two freshmen right behind him. And so, I think he felt, hey, listen, time for me to get out of here while I got a shot. My thing is, all these young men jumping into the transfer, and what you saw from a guy like Major Burns or the linebacker from Tennessee going to Alabama is there are spots, but I really sort of fear that a lot of these guys are putting themselves in a bad position because how many teams actually have a scholarship for you?
That's a good point.
And Matt, we're running into that now. Yeah. And the NCAA has to re-amend that rule that if you lose a guy, you should be able to get that scholarship back if you under 85. They have to be able to adjust that because I think that's going to hurt. Basically, they're a semi-pro team, if not a pro team, so to speak, the way college football is. You're going to get caught with some numbers at some spots. And injuries always happen. You can say, well, man, we're really good. We got the two junior running backs and we got the two freshman running backs. Well, what happened in the spring at LSU at running back? You got wiped out with injuries. So I'm a little bit surprised with Tre, and unless he's got a destination that he can hang his hat on, what I don't like is how many guys have we seen getting that transfer? Have you heard from them? Of them signing with another team.
Huh.
And you just think about that. Okay, I'm leaving because I'm unhappy being second or third string. And then I'm going to get in the transfer portal. And then what happens? You kind of strung around. And, Matt, I understand why it's in place, and all of us got to get used to that. But you better have a plan or a situation where you sort of know what you're doing. Not everybody's JT Daniels from when he left USC. Not everybody's that guy. Not everybody's TJ Finley. And you're going to get caught in some numbers crunch here. But I think the NCAA has to do college football a little bit of a favor here. And if you lose someone, to be able to get that scholarship back.
Yeah. You saw the USFL is being reborn. Any nostalgia there for you with the USFL coming back this spring?
Well, work with a dude that used to play.
They're going to bring back the Breakers, man. I'd love to see that.
Man, listen, I know Marcus Dupree really well also, and Marcus just let me know he got another movie part. Man, Marcus become an actor. Man, he drives a 18-wheeler. Man, he's a Renaissance man today. But the one thing that jumps out in me, and he'd have been 62 years old today, Sam Mills. God bless him. I mean, you talk about a guy that was an unbelievable football player, and what he did to change three teams. What he did with Philadelphia in the USFL, and then he comes to the Saints, and Coach Morris talked to so many times about it that, man, he said, I was a little scared because Sam did so many shows with Diliberto and I throughout the years, and he's come in and he's 5'8.5", and Jim was really concerned, could he still play that way in the NFL? Because he wasn't a good player. He was a great player in the USFL. And that first practice, cow! Man, it sounded like somebody was hitting something with a bat. Man, Sam would lay it to you, and he was at that time the closest football player I've ever seen to a coach on the field. He had a perspective of the game that was different than other people at that time. And it was interesting when you do a Monday night show with him, all the callers want to talk about is the game that happened. Sam sort of wanted to move off of that. If it was a big win, he didn't celebrate much. If it was a loss, he didn't dwell on it. You know what he was worried about? The next weekend. almost just like a coach is.
Mm-hmm.
And he would tell you things that went right, things that went wrong, but he could tell you what everybody on that field defensively should have been doing. You don't meet up with a lot of guys like that. Yeah, Peyton Manning is like that. Drew Brees is like that. But there's not a lot of guys that had that, and one of the nicest guys in the world. So he's coaching at Carolina now. And he knows that I got a pretty big memorabilia collection. And I got a really nice picture of him in a Saints uniform. And so I called him and I said, listen, if I send it to you, is there any way you could sign it? And I'll make sure somebody picks it up and sends it back to me. And he's like, what's the matter, Mike? You afraid I'm going to mess it up? I was like, no. But I don't want you to go through the problems of mailing it back to me. And he was like, man, that's nothing. Don't worry about it. Send it to me. Not only did he sign that picture, he sent me a Saints jersey sign. Mm. I mean, that's the type of guy he is. Okay, he's away from here, and we did shows together, but that was the type of guy Sam was. He was that type of individual. And, when you think about the USFL, he was a signature guy there. And how many young men from the Bayou ended up there? Bobby J. Ended up there with Michigan at first and then with the Invaders. I think about my old friend Clarence Verdun with the Houston Gamblers. And, man, Jim Kelly was the quarterback, and they were pitching the ball around 50 times a game. Jay Pennison, who played out in the home area and was a center, small center, went to Nicholls State and ended up starting for the Houston Oilers afterwards. There was so many guys that from this area at that moment in time, it gave them an opportunity. Clarence was 5'8". Okay, he can't play in this league. Clarence played double-digit seasons as a return man and part receiver for the Redskins, for the Colts, and then I think he ended up in Atlanta at the end with him and Dion. And even Dion to this day said, "There's only one dude that can out-talk me. And that's Clarence Verdun." And so, man, I think about that. But today, my thoughts were with Sam, who I think was the greatest player defensively in the USFL. Now, Reggie White started there, and he was with Memphis. And he was like at another level. But, again, it was a short look at Reggie. And really, we think more about him and what he did with Philadelphia and then later with the Packers. But, man, Sam was unbelievable. To watch him game to game, he was unbelievable as a football player. And to think that, that started the career of a Jim Kelly and Steve Young and Bobby and Herschel Walker. And, and Marcus was there and was a really good player before he messed up his knee. So, listen, I'm glad to see the USFL come back. I think that a league like that has a chance in the spring where there's a void for football, where people want to watch it. And it took a little while to kind of hatch. But, man, at a time when the USFL really was starting to make some ground, and they were making some noise because they were taking players that the NFL wanted. Where this is going to be. It's a developmental league, and I'm all for that.
Mike, I'm really interested to see what kind of nostalgia. I think, all the different spring leagues, this one's going to tug at some heartstrings, I think, and people are going to, because they got the same rights to the same names, team names, same uniforms, logos, all that stuff. It's going to be somewhat of a time capsule, a living time capsule of sort, which I think could actually work, man.
This is a difficult part because in my den, Bobby's signed a helmet from the Michigan Panthers. And people will come in and take a long look at that and said, man, Hebert played for the Carolina Panthers? I said, no, that's really the Michigan Panthers. But he's got it all over the name. But I finally got my hands on an Oakland Invaders helmet. I finally got one from there, and they're not easy to find. these USFL helmets, and I finally was able to track one down, and I'll get him to sign it, man. And that's unbelievable there with Charlie Sumner was the head coach. Fred Biletnikoff smoking cigarettes on the sideline. No, Fred always had that.
Straight out of the replacements, man.
Man,
so good.
Fred always had that Goree in his mouth, man. He was smoking.
Jerry says, Mike, did Buford Jordan play in the USFL? I guess we sparked some USFL questions.
Yes, he did. Buford played there also, and from there signed on with the Saints. But, yeah, Buford sure did.
Glenn Laurie said, ask Mike, where do you think Julio Jones ends up?
My thoughts, I know we've talked about it last week. I thought the Titans were a perfect spot for him. You get him out of the NFC. You'll get a second-round pick, maybe something a little extra, maybe a later-round pick. But I think it's to the point of no return with Julio now. You can't go on national TV, and make the – now, I don't – again, if it was set up to look like he didn't know or whatever, but I think Terry would like to move him. And now you pass June 1st, so there's some – little bit of relief there for your football team. You're not going to get a top defensive player for him. You're going to get a draft choice. And really, that's where the Falcons would need the most help. But, strangely, all this stuff about Seattle interested in him. My thing is, where the hell is he going to play? You got Lockett, you got DK Metcalf. I think the Titans are the team. And I think that they're leaking information to everybody trying to get a little bit more than what I think they believe they can. And they won't get a first-round pick. They'll get a second. So I think Tennessee is the spot. At least I hope so, because I do coverage for the Titans too.
Mike, let's see. A lot of people are asking. You and I covered it at the start of the hour, but I guess it's good to reset it for those just jumping aboard. Your thoughts on Brad Davis with the word that he's going to be the LSU offensive line coach?
I think he's, again, what I brought up, I think he's a really good coach. He knows the area well to recruit. And he gets the highest recommendation from Coach Pittman. And if people know Coach Pittman's background, he's an offensive line coach that became a head coach at Arkansas. He attended a camp at our Louisiana line camp, and I want to say it's either 2013, 2014. It's one of those 2 years. I actually interviewed him. Now, we're trying to find the footage on that particular deal. But the thing that jumps out at me, Coach Pittman did a clinic on offensive line play. And one of the things he brought up was about teaching players the technical part of the game and how it's changed now from being so much of a run-blocking offense to now pass protection. And he brought up 2 or 3 names of really good young offensive line coaches. One of them was Brad Davis. And so to me, that's his wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. He knows offensive line, and he knows offensive line coaches. And he coached Brad at Oklahoma. So I like the hire. I really do. I think he's a really good coach. You'll see more physicality up front. And I think that recruiting will be increased, and it'll be much to the upgrade.
Randall asked Mike, over under 9 wins for LSU this season. Mike, I think Vegas has it at 8.5. You got an early thought on that?
Yeah, it's 8.5. Actually, I got it, and actually, I plunked a few nickels down on the over.
Okay.
No. Listen, I'm not discreet about it. I think they can be a 9-win team, and if I get 8.5.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that at this stage because I was initially told by someone who is the chief sports odds maker for the win, and actually from Thibodaux, Louisiana. Man, they got a coon ass somewhere along everywhere. There's a connect the dots. And he thought it would be 9. And he told me we settled at 8.5. And I'm like, okay, how long is that going to last? Man, I jumped on that 8.5. I'll take that.
Ask Mike, who do you project to be the Saints' number 2 and 3 wide receivers?
Man, at this stage, it would certainly look like Traquan and Marquez Callaway.
Okay.
That Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway would be the 2 and the 3. And what I'm interested to see early on is the difference that you're going to see now with Winston at quarterback, because you're not going to run the same plays Drew did. Some of that will be the same, but you're going to want to push the envelope. deeper downfield. And I think that plays more into Traquan's game. And, man, I was impressed with Callaway last year. You got no rookie camp, no OTAs, no nothing. He came in there and he showed he belonged.
Yeah. Rivers Breedlove said, ask Mike, what music are you currently interested in? People love when you start riffing on music, Mike D.
Man, it's been a while because I got so many other things rolling on the music, Frank. But you know what? I've been listening to a lot of 80s music because I think when you go back in time, that 70s was lousy for music. I mean, lousy. It followed one of the great decades of music in the 60s where it was a big genre of it. And the 80s come in and you like, what the hell was that 70s music about? And that was, no, some of it was pretty, some of it, but man, for the most part, it was like, what the hell? Did I grow up in that deal to listen to that? And you think about when that was sort of the start of rap music, sort of the start of the grunge era, in bringing in, you saw a few kind of carryovers women-wise from country music into the pop world. But then all of a sudden the door opened, okay, with Madonna. And she kind of jammed that thing and ran through. And you had so much genre. Country music sort of came back. And it was the melting pot of a lot of what you hear today really started in the 80s of what you hear, especially from rap music and also pop music. Really, that origin was more 80s generated than 60s, 70s. And I think it just took off from there. It's just some great groups in there in that time frame. And I saw, I think, the greatest performer of my lifetime, Prince.
You go Prince over Michael Jackson.
Man, listen, nothing against MJ, but hey, give me Prince.
All right.
He put on a show that was unbelievable, like with high heels on, because you know he had those really platform shoes, and he gave you 3 hours. He was an unbelievable performer. To get to see live was just shocking. How good he was and how much energy he had at that particular time.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.